Here. So as we talk about connecting the generations, I think an analogy that puts it into context would be trees and branches. Because obviously, some of you maybe have been to the Redwood Forest before. My family took a trip there last year, and the trees are over 300 feet tall. Some of the trunks are 10 to more people around. I couldn't get my whole family around the base of it. And as we think about the strength that connecting the generations can do for children and the developing person, it's a lot like a tree with strong roots and a strong trunk. The branches could be the children, but as the winds of life inevitably come, I'm going to try to illustrate with the research how, as the winds blow, just knowing about your family history, who you are, and knowing the generations that connect, and having some love that binds you is what really will help children withstand, one of the things that helps them withstand the storms of life. So, let me just, why do we have an innate need to connect and belong to others? Well, I think there's some reasons why God placed that in there, but according to the research, from a religious perspective, I think it's clear that God has placed that desire for us to be connected. From an empirical or research perspective, from the womb we are wired to connect. Babies who are deprived of human connection, interaction, and especially touch, which is why you often will see the babies put, I know when one of my children was born, all my children are born, immediately mom gets to hold them. Having the skin-to-skin contact helps with brain functioning, helps with bonding, and really sets the tone for the relationships as that child interacts with mom and dad. But what is it about that? Is it just mom and dad that need to be connected to? Well, we have an innate desire to belong, to be connected to others. One of the reasons why you see gangs forming is people are looking for some sort of identity. Who am I? And what the heck am I doing in life? And they can't, if they're not finding that at home, they're going to find other sources to do that. So, attachment theory is focused on the relationships and bonds between people, and particularly long-term relationships, including those between parent and child and other family members. So the generational connectedness across one generation to another, part of that comes from this innate biological and I believe spiritual desire to be connected to others. We even see children who are raised in orphanages where they were not touched or held or had very much social interaction. The light seems to go out in their eyes, and that when they are interacted with, there's certain parts of the brain, oxytocin, that does not fire off because of the, I guess, social malnutrition, if you want to call it that. So, moving forward, a study from Oxford University showed that teenagers whose grandparents were actively involved in their lives were happier. They had fewer emotional and behavioral problems and got along with their peers better. Close relationships between grandparents and grandchildren buffer the effects of adverse life events, the researchers said. A little bit more on that. An important study in the U.S. showed that grandparents have a positive influence on their grandchildren that is distinct from parent-child relationships. I need to insert here, the study is not talking about that, but one of the distinct things is my parents and my wife's parents spoil my children a lot more than I do. So that's one distinction between us and my parents. And then they come in and they say, here, let's just shower you with spoiledness, and then they leave and let us deal with the spoiled hangover afterwards. I'm like, thanks, Mom and Dad. But there's something even deeper that occurs besides the spoiling that's distinct between the parent-child relationship and the grandparent-grandchild relationship. When grandparents stayed connected and involved with their grandkids, the children in both single-parent and two-parent families were kinder to others outside their immediate family and friends, and in some cases smarter. Let me give you another thing that helps us understand why we should be connected. I mentioned this about gangs. A report from 2008 showed that the gang is replacing the family in British society. The stereotypical image of happy families sitting in sunny kitchens may seem a long way from groups of gangsters lurking on our street corners, but their functions are surprisingly similar, trying to establish who am I, what's my purpose here, and are there people that care about me that I'm connected to? Trying to fulfill that connection. Okay, so with the 9/11 attacks in New York City on the World Trade Center and in other locations as well in Pennsylvania. And two researchers from Emory University studied the effects of how that trauma affected children. And children who knew their family stories and family history, where it seemed to be somewhat buffered by the effects. It doesn't mean that it didn't affect them, but going back to the tree analogy, their roots and their trunks were much stronger. And it seems to be that the research is showing us that when we know more about our grandparents and have a connection with them, even if it's just through story, that buffers the adverse effects in life. So I'll read this last paragraph. The more children knew about their family histories in the study concerning September 11th, the stronger their sense of control over their lives, the higher their self-esteem, and the more successfully they believed their families functioned. So, family stories can and should be real and authentic. We need to make sure we share these with our family. Whether or not you have a strong relationship, you can be sharing stories. There's a lot of different ways you can do this. So I won't bore you with the details of a bunch from my own family, but I know it strengthens me to hear that grandpa or one of my uncles or grandma or great-great-grandma went through something, and I think, wow, I'm going through something very similar, minus the technology and everything else. I'm going through something very similar. And it gives me strength to think, well, I'm not the only one who's gone through this, and even in my own family history where I have an identity with this particular person. I'm connected to them through the generations. So when and how can parents do this? They can research their family history, family journals, writing in family journals. Having family dinner together is a great time to discuss, hey, did you know that Grandpa, in fact, my son just did a research project on my dad's dad, and we found out he got all these awards in the Army, in the U.S., and he was in the invasion of Normandy on Utah Beach in World War II, got all these awards. Had no clue because that line of my family is very introverted and very quiet. They don't really talk a whole lot. And so we had to do some digging, and my son felt some greater pride of his family history because of that. So we also need to be emotionally available to our children. Family traditions, family reunions, and use Skype as often as we can if there's some distance that separates us. My wife's family has a family reunion every Memorial Day weekend. And in the United States, that's, usually the last Monday in May, the month of May. So we camp with 500 of our closest relatives for 3 days. And it is a tradition. And if you want to stay in the family, you go to camp out. They don't call it the camp out. They just call it camp out. And it's pretty hardcore. They are really into it. Everybody comes and brings food. They have a lot of traditions. You hear family story after family story. That's just one of the many ways in which that family tries to stay connected and keep the generations, that thread going from ancestors to progenitor or to posterity, just like the roots, twigs, and branches of a tree. So to illustrate this a little bit better, a friend of mine, one of my past students, Parker Seifus, and I are going to perform a song that was written by one of my best friends, a guy I used to be in a band with. He wrote the song about how love and stories really need to be the things that connect the generations. It's not really money that's going to strengthen your family. It's not going to be material possessions, but it's going to be that love and those stories. So my friend Andy Shelton has written this song, and Parker and I are going to perform that. I want you to look in the lyrics for how, I guess, the research is really supporting these lyrics, even though Andy didn't know about the research. I think he just intuitively knew it. So Parker.
I strongly believe that the people that we have in our lives are there for a reason, whether to help us grow and or to help us learn from their mistakes. Singila mingi nala na lege swala muna mbisala te nala laso kikeke na lakwe lakwe I kelege so ke gonanila. I dreamed of him last night. Central African Republic, my country. A country full of beautiful treasures, such as diamonds and precious stones. A country that is not fully known to the world. I know in my head that my home is one of the poorest countries in the world. But despite its poverty, my country is full with the happiest people on earth. People who are content with what they have. I am so blessed I was born and raised in Central African Republic. I love my country. I adore my country. But in my dream, a part of me also cried for my country. Because of an ongoing civil war, a never-ceasing civil war that has been shaking the country and its population. Civil war was the main reason and cause of my family moving far away. All of us, 8 children, 2 parents. Life was not easy because you may not know when will be the last time you're taking your breath. Tribes are fighting against other tribes to gain power. My father sought refuge from friends, and through them, he was able to find a place of safety for me and my siblings. Little by little, my family began to join one at a time. Even though I will never forget my country, I almost forgot something even more important. Fortunately for me, a wonderful woman's advice changed my life forever and taught me to remember something better than a dream. That women are powerful. That experience I will never forget is where I had a very powerful conversation with my mother at a point in my life where I had no direction. Upon graduating from high school, I decided to move away from home with the mindset that I am old enough to take care of myself. Even though I knew very well that the group of people I was hanging out with and living with was not the right group. All I wanted was to feel a sense of belonging and to feel accepted, especially with my limited English. One thing led to another, and I started drifting away from my family, living far away from them. I started getting in trouble, even though most of the time I was not the one causing the trouble. The group always used me as a blame for every trouble, which was the only reason why they needed me in the group. There was one day I remember very well. I felt let down and broken. I decided to call my mother, knowing that no matter how much she be at me, she will always say, "I love you" at the end of our conversation. I just needed someone to tell me that they love me. Especially to hear it coming from my mother. We talked for a while on the phone. Then my mother said something to me at the end of the conversation that changed my life forever. And even though I was expecting her to say "I love you," she didn't say "I love you." But what she said was, "Deborah, do me a favor and take with both hands and your heart the opportunity that you have been given here in this country. Because if you are in Africa, you will not even be closer to where you are right now. Not to mention having everything that you have right now. Somewhere out there, someone is dying to be the real Deborah that I know you to be. Please be the real you so that someone can help, so that you can help someone be like you." After listening to my mother's counsel, the next thing that came out of my mouth was, "Mom, I'm coming home tonight. I don't want anyone to be the person I am right now, but I am going to do my best to be a better me, so that someone will even consider becoming like me." I remember that when I got home that evening, I started to apply for universities. I even got full scholarships to play soccer for a couple of schools, but I did not want to attend a school where I could easily fall back into my bad habit, so I decided to try something else. My mother's advice is still ringing in my ear every single day. As I'm reading this to you, I am not where I want to be yet, but I am so far away from where I was 5 years ago. I am aiming for a higher and better me. I know that the people that we have in our lives are there for a reason, whether to help us or and to help us learn from their mistakes. Thank you.
telling this story on behalf of my husband so that you understand. My name's not in there. And I was hoping I wasn't going to cry again, but I am. No me diga. Mi querido esposo se me ha dejado sola. Y mi corazón está roto. No sé lo que voy a hacer ahora. My beloved husband has died and left me all alone. My heart is broken, and I don't know what I'm going to do. We were so close, and I miss him terribly. My life feels empty, and I can't stop crying. What will I fill my days with now that he's gone? I could spend time with my grandson and try to distract myself from my consuming grief. My grandson has the same name as my husband, Enrique. It's a family name passed on through generations. He is very delightful. He is only 4, and he has such chubby cheeks and beautiful blue eyes. I love to play with him. We play ball, and he plays me songs that his mother has taught him on the piano. My heart aches a little less each day as I bask in his smiles. There are so many things I can teach him. I can take him to the library to discover a love of reading. I can teach him how to play card games. I can comfort him when he gets hurt and sing to him my favorite healing song. I can cook him traditional Cuban dishes so he learns to love his heritage. I could take him to swimming lessons. We could have so much fun together. My heart can beat again by finding ways to shower love on this precious grandson. I will find purpose again in my life by guiding and teaching him. I can fill the time when his mother has to be away at work. I can mother him a little and leave part of me with him to remember when I pass on. I can be an influence for so much good in his life, and I will pass on to him the lessons he will need in his life. 5 years later, I love my time with Enriquito. He is the light of my life. I love to play cards with him, but sometimes he cheats. When he does that, I refuse to play with him for a while so he can learn to always be fair and honest. He begs me every day until I feel he has learned his lesson. Then we can play cards again. He must learn that there are rules in life. Going to the library with him is so much fun. We choose books to enjoy, and I read with him when we get home. I want him to learn a second language, so we choose books in English. I want him to be very confident and skilled in speaking 2 languages. I love to hear him play the piano. He doesn't always want to practice, so I encourage him frequently to go to the piano so I can hear his beautiful playing. This usually works. He will go because I am telling him how well he plays and that to improve, he must practice. This will serve him well in so many areas of his life as he grows because practice makes progress. 30 years later, my grandson is all grown and has a family of his own. He's a hard worker and a dreamer and has a very, very good sense of humor. He is so loving and thoughtful. I'm so happy I've had an opportunity to instill in him the values that were important to me and to my husband. I love him so much and will always cherish the time we spent together.
You young ladies did me in. I thought I could make it through this. I never thought writing this that I'd have the privilege to know and look out on faces that I know and had the privilege to be with last night. So I'm really hoping I can read this. At the young age of 9, I bounded out of my house early every Saturday morning to spend the day defending my LEC, from the neighborhood gunslinging cowboys. With my trusty 2x2 foot-long sawed-off rubber band shotgun, I'd take off across the street to the sawmill. The sawmill was off limits because of the large, dangerous timber stacks. But the mile-long, row upon row of cut trees proved too great of a temptation and a backdrop for my youthful imagination. I grew up adoring a great-great-grandmother that my father knew only from stories. The mystique of her shaped me. My Elise, that's Cherokee for grandmother. She had a beautiful name of Idaho Joanne. As a young boy sitting on my horse, the family footstool, I admired the Long Ranger because of the way he treated Tonto, Jay Silverhills. My father would remind me, "You're just as much like Tonto as you are like the Lone Ranger." Thus, with every battle fought on TV against the red man, my heart would struggle with loyalties to my Elise. Idaho Joanne Harding lived and raised her family in the harsh Oklahoma dirt. She died at 38 in the small town in which she was born. On one of those early morning outings, I was hiding away in the timber stacks and observed 3 older teenage boys throwing rocks at a magpie's nest. In spite of the mother bird's desperate attempts to distract the boys too determined, and the alleys of the dead trees too confining, I saw the babies killed. Surely, thinking all was lost, after a while, the frustrated mother magpie just flew away. Soon the 3 hooligans did the same. With the coast entirely clear, I climbed up over to see the shattered remains of an empty nest. But then I heard it. A small, fragile cry, 4 logs far below me. There sat, precariously situated, a piece of the nest, and in it, a brand new baby wonder. An old Cherokee legend holds that a grandson approaches his grandfather saying, "I feel a fight going on inside me." The grandfather replied, "I know what you mean. It is a terrible fight between 2 wolves inside of you. One is evil. He is so very angry and mean. The other is good. He is at peace and oh so kind." The young grandson asks, with worry in his trembling voice, "Which wolf will win, grandfather?" And the wise old Cherokee replies, "The one you feed." Not feeling courageous enough to stop the boys, but knowing what wolf to feed, I mustered up the courage from my honored Indian grandmother to venture down and grab a hold of that sweetest chick I've ever seen. Though the mother never returned, Smokey Joe lived with me for 2.5 years. This black-billed magpie would sometimes be gone for days, only to return to the shelter of his open-door hut on our front porch. Sometimes he would ride on the back of my dog Mickey, but his favorite pastime was to ride on my shoulder. I ride on the shoulders of many who have gone before me, but this strong woman, my Elise, has implanted in me a deep set of loyalties. these loyalties have been a backdrop to help me identify the wolf I choose to feed. Anytime I grapple with the battles from within or from without.
I wonder if there's a name for someone who actually loves the rain. The sky comes down close, hovering over me like a cool, gray comforter. The smell of the wet earth, wet grass, wet pavement. I love it, all of it. My mom says it's the Scotsman in me. She's been there, my mom. She's been to Scotland. She's told me about the green rolling hills and the wet marshes. She's seen entire fields covered with purple heather. She's been to the shores of Inverness and Edinburgh and traced the steps of my great-great-grandmother, Joan Anderson. When Joan was 18 years old, she met and married an adventurous man, Thomas Trevelyan. They lived in a two-widowed cottage next to her parents, by the sea, happy and comfortable. They had one little boy and another bairn on the way when Thomas set sail in search of a new life for his family. Joan stayed behind to deliver the baby while Thomas worked hard in America as a miner at the family trade in Empire, Colorado. The day finally arrived when he had earned and saved enough to bring them all to their new home. But on his way back to get them, his journey was stopped short in Terre Haute, Indiana, where he was robbed and murdered, leaving Joan a widow. And now their two little boys fatherless. He didn't get the chance to meet his own namesake, Thomas. Joan was determined that Thomas's dream would not die with him. Undaunted, she packed up her boys and every ounce of her courage and finished the journey, proving to herself, her young ones, and the generations that followed, that the decisions you make matter, especially in the face of hardship. Could she have known, or in her mind's eye seen me, a great-great-grandson, grateful and inspired by her choices? Would she believe that I harbor an abiding love for her region of the world? That I wear my kilt regularly? From my walls hangs their noble flag. Their music fills our hearts and our ears. There is no dearer or more noble sound than that of a bagpipe. When anciently Saint Andrew, the disciple, became patron saint of Scotland, a group of Christ-loving families united themselves under the name Anderson. Andrew's sons, the sons of Andrew. From Joan Anderson came my great-grandfather, the younger of those two baby brothers, Thomas. Then my grandmother, then my mother, then me. Andrew, the son of Andrew. My name is an endearing reflection of my clan and my Scottish ancestry. I carry our stories and our pride. Ever have I longed for those rolling moors and misty shores of Scotland. Any wonder I love the rain.